helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Have your unit compile its own code of conduct early, so there's ownership in acting responsibly. These concepts could apply to both Cub and Boy Scout units. Be clear about expectations and consequences. The unit's code of conduct can be beneficial here. The adult leaders are responsible for the appropriate behavior of the boys in the unit. Consequences. Timeouts work for Cub Scout-age boys. For Webelow Scouts and Boy Scout-aged boys, allowing them to experience logical consequences of their actions is valuable and supports the ideals of scouting. If a privilege, activity, materials and equipment, or another person is disrespected in any way, a logical consequence needs to be applied. Activity with a purpose. Be prepared to keep your meetings highly organized with plenty of physical and mentally challenging activities to keep the boys engaged. This means there is less time available for being off task, and it creates fewer opportunities for discipline to be necessary. With adolescents, try to avoid power struggles. Offer choices as much as possible. Learn to negotiate over challenging issues. You have completed this section of the course. In this section, you learned the BSA Youth Protection Policies are designed to protect both youth members and adult leaders. The BSA Youth Protection Policies include too deep leadership, no one-on-one contact, respect for privacy, separate accommodations, proper preparation for high-adventure activities, no secret organizations, appropriate attire, constructive discipline, hazing prohibited, youth leader training and supervision. Please continue to the next section, responding to disclosure of abuse. Child abuse is often described in 4 categories: physical abuse, non-accidental physical injury to a child inflicted by a person responsible for the child's care. Neglect, the failure to provide a child with things that are vital to the child's safety, health, and general well-being. Sexual abuse, any sexual act between a child and an adult or another child who's substantially older involving the misuse of trust and power. Emotional abuse, actions that significantly harm the child's emotional status and self-image. How do I recognize if a child has been abused? Children may respond to abuse in a variety of ways. Some may not appear to be affected at all. The following indicators may be signs that a child needs help and may have been abused. Physical abuse. Physical abuse is indicated if you see signs of injury that are different from the normal wear and tear of childhood and are found in soft tissue areas of the body, such as the back of arms or legs. Generally, the child is reluctant to give an explanation or gives conflicting explanations for the injuries. Bruises on the flanks, buttocks, or thighs. Multiple bruises of multiple colors suggest these occurred at different times. Bruises with unusual pattern or shaped like the weapon that was used to inflict them. Other signs of physical abuse include burns, multiple severe fractures, abrasions on the wrist, legs, or neck. Neglect. The signs of neglect may be more subtle and cover a wide spectrum, including poor hygiene,
poor clothing and equipment, although the parents have means. Chronic hunger. An unattended-to medical condition, such as chronic, out-of-control asthma or a festering wound. Habit disorders like thumb-sucking and head-rocking.
Sexual abuse. The signs of sexual abuse are varied. They include both physical and behavioral signs. The physical signs, such as injury to genitals, which could include burns, soreness, bleeding, or the symptoms of sexually transmitted diseases, do not last very long and are not visible. Youth are more likely to exhibit behavioral signs, which by themselves may indicate nothing more than a child needing help. But if these changes in behavior last for more than a few days, adults need to talk to the child, state the changes that have been noticed, and offer help. Behavioral indicators. Fear of a specific adult. Withdrawal and isolation. Overly compliant or cooperative when that's not the normal behavior. Sexually precocious. Sexually transmitted diseases. Shame and embarrassment. Sleep disorders or nightmares. Fears of going to a certain place or being around a certain person. Change in school performance or church, sports, or scouting activities. Anger, aggressiveness, and defiance.
Emotional abuse. The signs of emotional abuse are typically very subtle. Some of the most common ones are sadness, sensitivity to teasing, poor self-esteem, speaking about themselves in a negative or derogatory way, talk of suicide or attempts at suicide. It is important to note that when physical or sexual abuse or neglect is present, emotional abuse is present as well. If you observe these behaviors in a child, talk to the child, explain what you are seeing in his behavior, and make yourself available to talk when he is ready. Who are potential targets for abuse? Any child, male or female, can be a target for abuse. Certain characteristics or situations may make children more susceptible. Physical abuse targets. Children who live in homes where drugs and alcohol are abused. Children who live with families under high-stress conditions, like unemployment. Children who are very hyperactive or withdrawn or exhibit other characteristics that could frustrate the parent or caregiver. Sexual abuse targets. Children with poor self-esteem. Children seeking affection or nurturing. Children who are physically or mentally challenged. Children who live in families with drug or alcohol abuse or history of incest. Children who tend to be loners. How do you recognize a molester? Child molesters are very difficult to identify. There is no foolproof screening process to recognize a molester, no matter how much checking you've done. Molesters are usually male, but can be female. Some child molesters are themselves children. The concept of dirty old men in trench coats and stranger danger as the type who molest are myths. Typically, molesters are someone the child knows, a friend, a relative, or someone who is somehow involved in one of the child's activities. Someone who's in a position to spend lots of time with the child, either in person or on the internet. Someone who gives the child gifts and attention. Someone who has an excessive interest in children. Often someone who seems too good to be true.